Okay, so it looks like we're live. Definitely got sound. So, hello everyone. I'm Tim from Tim's PC, and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. Also, live stream my builds and repairs for transparency and educational purposes. So, if you'd like to get an awesome new PC and you'd like to see it put together live, send me a message today. All right. So tonight we're going to be building. It's a special order here for a young guy named River. So shout out to River if he's watching. Apparently he's very keen on seeing this PC get built. So what have we got? So why is it a special order? It's a special order because the customer already has a graphics card, so they're going to add their own graphics card on their end. We're just going to be building the PC and making sure everything else is set up and ready to go, so they can just plug in the graphics card on their end. All right. So let's go through the specs, and we can get stuck into it. We can have a look at the motherboard and everything else as we go. Yeah, not really too much else to this. So we've got a Ryzen 5 5500, good budget CPU there. We got this is a 16GB kit of RAM, I believe. Let me get this right before the customer starts freaking out. Yes, 2 times 8GB. We got a 1TB NVMe SSD. We've got the Asus Prime B550M-A Wi-Fi 2 motherboard. We've got a 650-watt power supply and the Deepcool, the GameMax Destroyer case. So this is an excellent budget case. You can pick this up for about 70 Aussie dollars. It comes with the 4 pre-installed RGB fans. The only thing to be aware of is that they're just fixed mode RGB fans. So you might want to do get some new fans and stuff like that installed there if you want addressability. But I mean, considering the case is only $70 with the 4 fans, it's still a pretty good deal. The case looks great, and it's easy to do any upgrades to down the track. So I've been selling a few of these recently just because times are tough, and there's a certain person who really doesn't care what the case looks like as well. So these have been good for that. But as you can see here, we have a budget PC. It's fairly entry level, but these days, modern system entry level, that's still pretty decent. Okay, so let's get started. Let's have a look at this motherboard. So this is the same motherboard we had the other night. Remember when I had one with the RAM slot wasn't working, or one of the RAM slots weren't working. I had to do a RA on it. Well, let's hope it's not a batch issue. Okay, so that's the motherboard there. So this is sort of the glue that holds everything together. People can spend a whole lot of money on motherboards, but fundamentally what you've got to do when you buy a motherboard is shop by the components that it has. Make sure that it has the right outputs on the back there to suit your needs. In this case here, we've got 6 USB ports, including 2 there that have the higher voltage capabilities. That's why it's a different color. These display ports here won't be utilized because we don't have a CPU with onboard graphics. We'll plug into your graphics card for your display outputs. We got Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.1 on here. I've got 2.5 gigabit LAN, it would be, I'm pretty sure, and standard audio outputs there. Alright, so the rest of this stuff here, the main things, got a heatsink here on the MOSFET and VRM. So that's very important because this is where power gets delivered to the CPU, and it's also it also powers other systems on your motherboard. So basically, if you buy a motherboard and it's really cheap and it doesn't have any of these heat sinks on it, and you plug in a more high-powered CPU or high-powered graphics card down there, it's going to cause all this to overheat. Okay, that's why they put all these heat sinks and stuff on there on the more expensive motherboards, because you can't run a lot of power through here or through here without running that power through some part of the motherboard as well. That's why graphics cards have their own power connector on them, because there's only a certain amount of juice that can be supplied through the slot. They need auxiliary power to power them. Yeah, AM4 socket here for our CPU. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 fan headers. So just be aware, 4 fan headers on this board. If you buy 3 packs of RGB fans to install, they'll have a splitter, so you can hook 3 fans onto the one header with the cable that they provide. We got 2 12-volt RGB headers and 1 5-volt. Once again, you can hook multiple devices up to these headers. When you buy them, they'll have a daisy chain kit for it, whether it's a cable or it's the sort of fan that'll just slot together or clip together. You'll be able to hook them up through the single addressable header. So that's just a point to note there. We don't use the 12 volts very much these days, so I don't even know putting them on, but anyway. 4 slots for our memory here, so 4 slots and 2 channels, so that's why we have the RAM sticks, I should say, installed in a slot apart, because these 2 slots here is one channel and these 2 slots here is another channel. The CPU can talk to both of those channels at the same time, so there's an improvement in performance by having one stick in each channel. And something to remember, your CPU and your RAM are kind of joined at the hip. Other than the motherboard, the CPU and the RAM, the 2 things that you need plugged in as a bare minimum to make this do anything. Okay, without either one of those, it won't do anything at all. Okay, you don't necessarily need a graphics card, although we do in this case. You don't necessarily need to have an SSD in it. You will obviously need to have a power supply. We're just taking that out of the equation now, because obviously something electronic needs power. But yeah, to make it do something, to make it like turn on and display something, these are the 2 components that you need. The other thing too to remember, a lot of people talk to me about this, is if you have a problem with your PC, it might look like a CPU problem or it might look like a memory problem, but it's really hard to tell one from the other, because they can both cause the same kinds of failures. There are certain things that go wrong with memory that are really characteristic of specifically memory, but some motherboards have a little indicator light that says CPU, RAM, boot, and VGA, and these lights are meant to tell you what's wrong with it. See, sometimes it could come on with a CPU light, but it will be your RAM. It could potentially come on with a RAM light, and it's actually your CPU. So it's always a little bit more complicated until you go and investigate it. USB 3, SATA, USB 2, front panel audio on there, obviously. So these little gold capacitors there, that's your audio capacitors. These are your audio outputs at the back. Okay, and so we got two M2 slots for high-speed SSDs. We've got our PCIe X16 there and two little X1 slots there. So fun fact, these M2 slots here, these are actually the same as this. The same kind of thing, but it's just a different form factor. So these are PCIe X4 connectors with the M2 form factor. This is a PCIe X16. And now the pins are, this basically what it means is the pins are connected all the way along. You could have this a slot this long, but you could have the pins only connected like halfway along, roughly where my finger is there, and that's called an X8 slot. It's connected halfway along. Then you can also have an X4 slot which comes to here. Or you got the little tiny X1 slots down here. And so these M2 slots, these are X4 slots, but they're in a different form factor. So, and yeah, that's the main sort of features there of the motherboard. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll install the little offset pieces for the M2 drives. Then if you want to install a second M2 drive down the track, you won't have to go looking for this little bolt. Alright, so I'll put our SSD in the bottom slot and leave the top slot vacant so it's nice and easy to add some extra storage. This M2 is essentially the new standard for SSD storage in the 2020s and beyond. So while you can still get a SATA SSD and they still work completely fine, this form factor is becoming popular, and economies of scale are starting to have an effect, so they're becoming cheaper and cheaper. They're now as cheap as SATA SSDs anyway, and so that's also fueling people buying these ones more. Some of the more high-end boards come with up to 5 NVMe SSD slots. Okay, so we got our RAM here. So stick 1 and stick 2. So some people don't fully understand what RAM is, and they get like RAM and storage mixed up and stuff. But RAM is kind of similar to storage in some ways. RAM is sort of high speed storage specifically for your SSD. Sorry, for your CPU, I should say. Basically what that means, when people say, oh, the app or the software is loading, that term loading, that means going from either the internet or your SSD or hard drive, and it's being loaded from those storage devices or the internet. It's being loaded into the system memory or the RAM. Once it's loaded in the RAM, then the CPU can access all the information really, really fast. Super fast interface between the RAM and the CPU. Calling it SSD, don't mind me. And so that's basically what happens when you open up an app. Think of something more complicated that you open up. It takes a few seconds for it to open up. While those first few seconds are going on, it's not very responsive. You know, it's not quite responding to your clicks and stuff like that. But after it loads, then everything is responsive in real time, and that's because it's all the data that the CPU needs to run that app is stored in memory, so it doesn't have to go looking for it. It can access it, super fast. So that gives you a bit of an idea what all this sort of stuff is. This needs to go in the back of the PC, but I'm also going to use this as a knife. And so it doesn't matter what kind of graphics card that you hook up to this. I think you said you have a Radeon RX 580 by memory. So I'm just going to be using my my standard little Nvidia card here that I use. Check out this Nvidia card. It's got a little X1 interface there, like would fits in these little tiny slots down the bottom there. But it doesn't matter. It can also just get plugged into the big one there. It makes no difference. But believe it or not, to mount AMD's own cooler that comes with their CPUs, you actually have to remove the mounting brackets that come with it. Stocko. Definitely something to confuse you. Okay, so pre-applied thermal paste. So these screws here are designed so you don't over tighten it. You can feel the resistance once it's got the right amount of mounting pressure. Because you want just the right amount of tension. You don't want too much tension. If you get too much tension, it starts to bend the metal slightly, and then you don't actually get as good a contact in the middle. It can also damage your motherboard if you over tighten them. But these stock coolers that come with AMD's CPUs that they include for free on their cheaper CPUs, these coolers, like I said, they have screws that won't allow you to over tighten them. Alright, and you can just sort of tuck a bit of that excess cable up there behind your stock cooler, and it looks nice and neat from the front. Okay, so that is all sorted over there. Let's turn our attention to the case. Okay, Okay, so I got the offsets in place. Okay, so I don't need 2 slots for this graphics card, but we do need 2 slots for the RX 580. Okay, so power supply slides in at the bottom there. Okay. Okay. Alright, so this is the part that people tell me that they hate the most about building a PC, and that's plugging in these addressable cables here for the power switch and stuff. But honestly, you guys have no idea how good you have it these days. Okay. So we're nearly done. Like I said, this is a pretty simple assembly here tonight. No graphics card. Well, there will be a graphics card, but not exactly one for Call of Duty or Fortnite. Run your emulators, okay? chucked in a packet of screws and stuff for you. Just so you got something to hook your RX 580 up if you don't have the screws. All right. Sorry. That wasn't my bad. One of the cables for these fans was on the other side, causing all kinds of bullshit. Okay. We have posted, no problems there at all. Now I should have a new BIOS for it. So the BIOS is the firmware that comes with the motherboard, and what I mean by that is you plug a lot of different devices into your motherboard. How the motherboard sort of handles those devices really depends on how up to date the software is that comes with it, and that's what you get with a BIOS update. Now, as a general rule, if you're sitting at home, don't update your BIOS unless you're completely capable of rolling back the BIOS to the previous version if you have a problem, because sometimes when they release an update it can cause a problem with some older devices that you might be using. So as a general rule, I do a BIOS update when I build the PC and send it to the customer, but if the customer doesn't have any problems with it, they should not touch the BIOS. Don't worry about it. Only worry about it when you have problems. So that's the safest way to do it. It'll save you potentially a lot of time. And so yeah, as you can see here, the previous version there was from 2023, August 14th. And down here we've got March 22nd, 2024. Yeah, don't mind the date format is in USA. That's weird. It's got a magnet in the back, but not on the bottom. So you can have it like this. The other reason why you shouldn't do this yourself at home is if something goes wrong while you're doing this, you might not be able to fix your motherboard. You might, what we say in the industry, you might brick your motherboard. As in, you're turning your motherboard into an expensive brick. So yeah, if you were doing this and there was a blackout, see you later, motherboard. But see, when I do it here, I've got a UPS here, so if I get a blackout, nothing happens to the computers in here. Actually, I won't install it just because it's a bit tight in the box. Okay, so we can enable our XMP 3200 MHz CL16. Alright, so we'll get Windows loaded up. I can't really run any gaming benchmarks on it because we don't really have the right stuff. So we'll just get everything all set up, and then it'll be easy for you to go and do the rest of the install. So I'll download the driver that you have to install, but you'll have to have your graphics card plugged in to install it. So I'll leave the file on your desktop. It's nothing technical. It's a standard, like, open it up and it opens up the installer, and you just sort of keep clicking next kind of thing, and it downloads and installs it all for you automatically. So you don't have to do anything technical. It's really straightforward. So yeah, I'll download that, I'll put it on the desktop. So all you need to do on your end is get your graphics card, plug it into the slot, bolt it into the case, and then plug in the power cable, and it's all yours. And then yeah, install the software in Windows, obviously. And yeah, your windows can be either 10 or 11. I upgrade them to 11, unless someone tells me just leave it on Windows 10. It's the same thing. If you don't like 11, you can switch back to 10. At least now, for the moment, you can do that. Oh. Sorry, I don't have a moderator. Someone's asking what's the difference in performance with a 4090 and a 9900K if he goes up to a 7800X 3D. Considering you got a 4090, you're going to get the most benefit possible from the 7800X 3D. So in that case, you need a pretty significant upgrade. 9900K, once you start getting more than like a 3070 or 3080, once you start hitting that sort of point, then it starts to sort of bottleneck it in a more considerable sense. You probably won't be able to. You'll probably be losing what 10-ish% performance, and you gain most of that, if not a bit more, with the 7800X 3D. You gotta remember as well, it won't just be the 7800X 3D. You'll also be moving to DDR5 RAM as well. So yeah, definitely, I would definitely look into that because you got a 4090. When it comes to the benefit for paying extra for the 7800X 3D, the benefit is greater the more powerful the graphics card you plug into it is. So if you have a more budget or mid-range PC and that's what you're gonna roll with it, you're not gonna like upgrade it in 6 months time and plug in a 4090 or something like that. You're just buying a PC. You probably don't need the 7800X 3D. Put as much into your graphics card as what you can. As long as you've got a modern CPU, it'll keep up nicely in most games. If you do plan on putting in a 4090, or you do have something, something better than, like, I don't know, 4070 or better, yeah, you probably don't need the 7800X 3D, unless you have a graphics card that can sort of properly justify the rest of the expense, because it'll get you a little bit of extra performance with whatever graphics card you pair with it, but the performance gain that you get, like the real world frames per second performance that you get, is greater when you pair it with a more powerful graphics card. So when it comes to 4090, yeah, you should definitely be looking at the top tier for a gaming CPU to go with it. So hopefully that answers that. Just got a few general comments there. Sorry to anyone who's been trying to talk to me in the comments. I don't have a moderator tonight. She is predisposed. Just a second. Alright, sorry about that. Okay. Well, I do have an NVIDIA GPU for now, so I'll install the driver. What have we got? B550M-A Wi-Fi 2. Okay. What is this? Yeah, whatever. You don't want to play, you don't want to play. So I'll just do all the offline stuff now quickly. Saves a bit of time. Won't need all the benchmarks there, I'll just install Heaven. My NVIDIA drivers are too modern for the graphics card. Even though my graphics card's relatively new for a model, the GPU on it is pretty old. Only reason I've got it is it's good for diagnostics. It has an X1 interface, so you can plug it in pretty much anywhere. Alright, so we'll restart and yeah, then we'll finish up. Pretty straightforward from here anyway. So I'll install Steam, Battle.net, Epic, EA. I'll install MSI Afterburner, so you've got some graphics card controls for like your fan speed and stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much all we're going to need. Oh. I might want to actually plug in an internet cable. Okay. Yep. Okay. It's downloading really slow from Epic Games. $200 kilobits. I feel like it's freaking 1999 again. Okay, that's what you click on there to install Radeon drivers. Something's not right with Epic's servers. Alright. Yep. So Crystal Disk Info lets you check the status of your storage devices, gives you a little health status there, nice and easy. CPU Z tells you everything you need to know about your PC specs. Your CPU specs, motherboard, RAM, these two, graphics card, stress test, bit of info there. Hardware monitor just logs all your temperatures and voltages and stuff. MSI Afterburner, that gives you options for your graphics card. There will be a fan control option here, but my graphics card that's plugged into it right now doesn't have fans. Heaven Benchmark there, that's just it's a test app for your graphics card. Armory crates being painful as always. Alright, well, look, I'm going to let this go. Everything else is all good to go. We're downloading Cinebench and stuff for the stress test. This will just do its thing. My internet's been okay. It's running it's pretty slow now, but it was up at 100 megabits before. So I don't think the issue's on my end. I think it's just a bit busy on the other end. This has just been coming through really slow from Microsoft. You saw Epic Games just trickling through there. I don't know. Anyway, so look, thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all in the next video.